Again, welcome to the EJF learning session. Today we are going over preparing for budget season. Our guest speakers today are Lisa Coffey, Director of Community Outreach, Sarah Steele, Director of Project Management, and myself, Sarah Keller, Director of Community Managers. Like usual, this session is being recorded and a link to the session and the slides will be shared after. After the presentation, we will have time for a Q&A session. So today we will be going over the importance of a strong budget planning, key milestones for budget preparation, common pitfalls to avoid, strategies to engage the community, and best practices for successful budgeting. So budget season for our fiscal calendar year associations began back on August 1st. Before you are even presented with a budget, your manager has a list of things they run through prior to presenting the template. The managers will they check with all service providers for increases in 2026 pricing, request renewal contracts as needed. Sometimes you already have in place a multi-year contract, which will be reviewed during this time period. They check in with their insurance agent to see what the next renewal increase could be and what a good budget amount is for 2026. They will scrub all the GLs. We're not talking about doing dishes here. They run reports, look at all expense GLs compared to the budget. They may move certain expenses to more appropriate GLs during the scrub. They are looking at trends, seeing if any recurring payments were missed, and if the description for the GLs are accurate. This is a very important step that they take, and you will see their hard work in the next financial statements that is published. As a company, we are checking utilities providers increases for 2026, such as Washington Gas, DC Water, Dominion, WSSC, basically any utility provider and any community that we manage. After all of this is done, they retrieve the template from our AI. Yes, we use AI at EJF, and we have a special software called HOAI, which links with Vanica. Vanica is the database we manage your community out of for financials, records, and communication. HOAI will then pull together the information in our Vanica software to produce a template. At that point, managers do another review of the template, make adjustments based on their knowledge and research of the community. I always love this time of year because it's my way of really getting into the weeds with a specific community, and it kind of just puts together like this beautiful picture of where the association stands, where they're trying to go, and I share my knowledge in the template. It's kind of proof of all the hard work that I've done over the prior year with working with that community, and what we're looking to do for the next. After the draft the manager provides will include a ton of notes in the far right column. These notes will include things like how they came up with those figures, questions for the board, suggestions from the manager, recommendations for possible, we might want to bid out the HVAC contract this year. It seems to keep hiking up every year, and I know you're not happy with it, so I'll make a note with on the side about that, and then we can have a conversation, and maybe I'll start getting bids together in time for January. So between now and October 1st, boards will receive budget drafts. If you need your budget by a specific date or would like an update on where it stands, please reach out to your manager. They're happy to accommodate different timelines that different communities have. We ask as a company to have all approved budgets back by November 1st to ensure that we have adequate time for mailing, coupon generation, and adding the charges for January 1st. Now I'll hand things over to Lisa. Lisa, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Can we move to the next slide, Sarah? Thank you. So here are a few key components to review to produce a well-informed, all-inclusive budget. So we're currently examining 3-year trends to look at patterns which will inform our decisions. Things like increases in rates of utilities, insurance, and all the things that Sarah just talked to you about. This is all part of the review of looking at contracts and examining the trends to see where we're headed and inform us where we should go with our 2026 budget. Vendor contract review is important. As Sarah mentioned a moment ago, perhaps we need to look at some new contracts. Perhaps we need to consider what's happened in the past to inform us for going forward. And finally, reserve funding. For me, I feel like we should regularly review our reserve study. And in fact, it's required by at different intervals by different states. But we have engaged in this reserve study to help us adequately fund for the future and finance projects that need to be done for the association, for the betterment of everybody in the association. So let's make sure that we're current with our reserve study, that we're funding to reserve levels. This will give us make us best prepared for what we face in the future.
One key thing I want to note here about the 3-year trends is that I always find the general repairs and maintenance section, having that data, those 3 years, really helps plan for the next. I mean, there's ebb and flow, but then I find like sometimes a community might consistently under budget for plumbing. And it's like, okay, well, let's get real about how much we need and what our demand is and fund for that. So this way we're not falling short in the upcoming year.
Yeah, and to hitch on to what Sarah said, budgeting is a bit art and a bit math. So, repairs and maintenance, that's a real thing. We are going to have repairs and maintenance. We are going to have these kinds of costs. So let's focus on that and think about it and be real and be conservative in our budgeting.
I think the 3-year trends is also gives you the ability to see, as they say, trends, right? If you start to notice that you're seeing more consistent expenses within a particular type of repair, that would be an indication that you may need to start exploring replacement of, if you're having more mechanical repairs, or your roof is leaking and you need to, you're implementing more repairs than you would anticipate, that would be a good time to assess whether or not the replacement of those items would actually be more cost efficient for the association.
Speaking of roofs, one of my favorite things to do is to get roof inspections done for communities. There's a lot of companies out there that'll do them, and I always find that the roof is the most important component of a community, because once it starts going, you end up spending a lot of money on repairs and maintenance, like repairing people's units, repairing common areas. People are inconvenienced. It makes them unhappy. And so, like, if you can get a roof inspection done and get like a small punch list of just some repairs that need to get done, like you're preventing all of that headache and heartache, as well as the money, right? Because it's cheaper to patch a roof than it is to fix somebody's ceiling.
Yeah.
Okay. Feel free to continue, Lisa. Sorry, I went on a tangent about roofs.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think it's good for everybody to hear. The most, in my opinion, most common budget pitfall is to underestimate what it's going to cost, which is why we look at 3-year trends to help solidify our thinking on what it's going to cost. Can electricity be that expensive? Yes, actually it can. Are we really spending that much money on repairs and maintenance? So underestimating and underfunding your budget as well as your reserves can jeopardize not only the operation of the process, but will be grossly underfunded for the year and run into some financial troubles. And this we should focus also on we don't want to underfund reserves. We don't want to jeopardize future projects like the roof that needs to be fixed, or any other kind of capital projects. At the same time, we cannot also ignore inflation. If we're planning to do this roof project 10 years out or 5 years out, we need to factor in all of the component pieces and elements of budgeting. So like I said, it's a little bit art and a little bit math, but let's be conservative in our forecast. Let's maintain a good, strong financial stability for the association and for the community that we all share. And let's foster transparency. Let everybody know what we're doing. This information is power. It breeds involvement and trust, and I think it's good for everybody. So transparency with homeowners for trust and credibility, big deal. But let's be conservative in our budgeting.
Yeah.
Preaching to it.
Of course, one of the things that I see when I'm having an active conversation with a board, and we're, doing a little huddle session, getting the budget together, seeing like, okay, the original draft came out with a 7% increase. And it's like, well, that's a bit much. And I understand, right? I mean, this is your pocketbook that this is hitting, and, not every draft that we produce is going to be 7%. But one of the things that I see boards sometimes looking at reducing is preventative maintenance, like cutting that down. And it's like, if you cut down your preventative maintenance and cut out those different things that happen, then you're going to be having more repair costs. And the repair costs are going to be more than preventing something from happening, as well as, quality of life for people. All right.
All right, so I'm going to kind of step in here and talk to you a little bit more in depth about your reserves and the long-term planning that buildings should be doing to ensure that they're not underfunded and causing a larger issue for their constituents. So when you're working on your annual operating budget, it's a great time to do that strategic planning for larger capital improvement projects that every building faces. These are projects that are necessary to keep your building operating efficiently, structurally sound, and to be frank, to be competitive in the marketplace. Examples would be, as we've said, replacement of the roof, replacement of common area mechanical systems, electrical and plumbing infrastructure, and building facade maintenance. Lisa mentioned that you need to ensure that you're funding your reserves at the recommended rate that's spelled out in your reserve study. This will be my plug to tell you that if you don't have a current reserve study, one that's been updated within the last 3 to 5 years, you should be budgeting in your operating budget to do one in 2026. Your reserve study provides the forecast for replacing the building's common elements, and it provides the financial requirements for completing those projects at the appropriate time. So it's really critical for a building for the planning purposes. I often see communities underfund their reserves and delay completing projects, and they end up in situations where they're forced to implement large special assessments to undertake these projects on an accelerated timeline because the issue or the roof has failed or the mechanical systems have failed, and it affects the quality of life for each of the unit owners, and it creates a much bigger and more expensive problem. Sarah had mentioned, if your roof leaks, it's going to cause leaks into the unit, which could then lead to mold issues, abatement, much more expensive than just keeping the roof maintained. Even worse are those buildings that there's a third party stepped in and said that they won't provide funding for the sale of a unit because there are too many outstanding deferred maintenance items, or or it's caused structural concerns for the building. So again, proper planning will allow you to kind of address issues in a timely manner and not under duress. I have a daughter who's a freshman in high school, and I often preach to her that, do the hard work now so that you have options later. And I think that that's actually good advice for communities as well. Take the time to review your reserve studies. EJF has the resources available to you to work with you and to do that strategic planning so that you can plot your course, make sure that you have enough funds in reserve so when it does come time to do those larger projects, that you're able to make thoughtful, well-educated decisions, get the input of your constituents in the building, and not scramble at the very end.
Yeah, one of the things that I see with reserve studies sometimes is like we'll do it to check a box, and it's like it's not to check a box, it's a guide. And it's very important to like during this time of year, I manage some communities directly, and I bring it out and I look at it and I look to see like, okay, well, what did we do? Are we on schedule? Are there certain things that we missed? Are there certain things that need to be adjusted? And the time frame is great, but like when I get a new study done, I always encourage the board to meet with the reserve study professional and review it together. And then sometimes it's even helpful if a board member is available during the day to do a walk with that engineer. I always do the walks with the engineers for the reserve studies. And I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I always learn something new. There's always some little nugget of information, and it's very eye-opening, and kind of sets the building in a different light.
I agree.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
So engaging the community, in addition to what Sarah and Sarah were speaking about engaging the community in our reserve planning and our reserve funding, it is also an informed community is a well-running community. We all live here. We all have a stake in the success of this community. So try and listen to concerns of your homeowners and address them. Foster involvement. Knowledge is key. Knowledge is power. To understand the whys and the hows of a smooth budget the budget process makes that budget process more smooth. And so, share the highlights, communicate, share updates. Your manager can help you with communication tools. But I think an informed community is a better community, a more smooth running community. And I think, again, knowledge is power. If everybody feels that they're part of the process, that they have a voice, that they have input, it's a smoother process overall for the whole community, which in turn creates a well-running, smooth operating community.
Yeah. Something that I find helpful when we're presenting, like the board and I are presenting to the ownership, the budget, is breaking down the information into like tangible things. Because it's like you look at a budget and there's all these GLs, there's income, repairs and maintenance, contracts, administration, like they're long documents. And people can get lost in all of those things. And it's good to share the details. But by like breaking it down and like simplifying it or putting it like in charts, using visuals, PowerPoints, makes it a little easier for people to digest. And I find that we're having better conversations with the community, and the community is actually ingesting the information and kind of understanding like the position they might be in, or, even if you're doing great, like still, I love seeing treasurers put together these reports because it really does make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. So best practices. Start early, please. Start early. It's a longer process than we all every year think it's going to be. We have folks to invite in. We have schedules to accommodate. We have, because it's year end, we also have holidays coming up. We have lives, all of us. So the earlier we start, the more successful we're going to be. Our team at EJF, as Sarah said, has already started. We've been looking since the beginning of August. We've been looking at scrubbing GLs, looking at contracts, preparing our information through the AI program and excuse me, and getting ready for this. So we've kind of started the ball of start early. Let's see if we can't keep that ball rolling throughout the process. Keeping track of revisions, stay organized, keep track and communicate. Use your management team. As I said, and we've all said, your management team has been working on this since August. So let us help you. Let us give you, use us as a resource. Let us give you our opinions and our thoughts and the output of our work to help you through the process. Document your assumptions and decisions as you go along. You'll find ours from EJF in the notes on the far right-hand side. This helps everybody understand clearly not only the numbers, but also the thought process behind it, because sometimes a number looks to one person different than another. But if you have the thought process and the assumptions and the notes, it helps to digest, if you will. It helps to understand. It helps to, get your coalition together for budgeting. Obviously, annually, we need to review and adjust the budget. We don't want to ever let it lapse. There are requirements in our governing documents that dictate that this must be done. But it's also just not financially healthy for the community to allow the budget to lapse. So I would focus some attention on this and again, start early, stay organized. Remember, budgeting is a little bit of art and a little bit of math. So, let's see if we can't push this over the finish line. Engage our project management team, Sarah and her team, for long-term planning of capital projects. It's absolutely key, and the key to the success of any bigger long-term capital type project is having someone help you with it, help you navigate you through it, manage it with you, for you, and around you. Expert level management on these is going to make the project better, but also life in the community while it's going on better. So, think about that. Think about capital projects you have coming up and engaging with the team. And finally, open communication with your community members, I think, is key. Again, knowledge is power. Inclusion is going to help the process go more smoothly if you listen to all opinions and factor folks in. Again, we're all, everybody has a stake in this, so let's be, as much as we can, inclusive in the decisions and share notes and share thoughts and share assumptions. I think if we can do all of that, we get a smoother budget process and we can, keep the ball rolling and stay early, stay organized. Rah, rah.
One of the things that kind of popped into my head is that sometimes, and I kind of include myself in this category, aren't the most comfortable with financials, right? Like I know how to do a budget, I know how to pay bills, I've been doing it for a long time, but I wouldn't say like I'm a numbers person. And I know that sometimes people end up in a treasurer position and they're like, well, I got the basics of it, but like I don't feel comfortable in this. Ask questions. Your manager's happy to help you. And if they can't answer those questions, because like, they're managers, they're there to help with the day-to-day operations of the community and help guide you. They're going to pull in resources for you. They're going to ask the community financial manager to assist, whoever that might be, which Lisa has a whole team. That's the department that she runs. And that person's going to be familiar with your association and be able to help answer those questions and help guide you. But your manager does, we have a lot of veteran managers at EJF that have been doing it for a long time. And we make these suggestions and recommendations because we have the reference of our own histories, right? And we want to make sure that we have proper funding because I personally hate having special assessment calls for a lot of reasons. It's never a fun thing for a community to levy one, and it's a hard conversation to have. So if we can, properly align the budget, plan for the future, and be
Mhm.
realistic about like what the community needs, um, you're going to be better off. And one of the things that I've seen time and time again is an association's brand name just got turned over from the developer. Well, those fees that were set by the developer are going to be unrealistic, um,
Inadequate.
inadequate, extremely inadequate.
Yep.
And these newer associations end up with these larger increases up front, and that's always super hard to swallow. And it's a hard conversation to have. But if you're a newer association and you just got turned over from a developer in the last few years, it's what's expected, because you got to start building up that reserve account in your war chest essentially to tackle those projects.
Yeah. Yeah. And to Sarah's point, to put a more fine point on it, the developer's budget is budgeting for an unfinished project. Not every unit using electricity, water, gas, needing repairs, needing trash pickup, needing, insurance in a whole community way. So it oftentimes is a difficult conversation, but necessary for the success of the community. This brand new community out of development, necessary for its success.
Yeah, I think within that same type of community, one that's newly turned over from a developer, I guess related to my world, I would say heed your transition study, right? Because small projects identified early are going to become large projects later or larger issues later. And so really very important to address it with the developer while you have the opportunity, because trying to fight for it later is nearly impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, and it becomes a big a struggle and maybe even a legal battle. And so perhaps, the better time, as Sarah says, is, heed the study that comes from the, through the transition and address it in real time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's time for Q&A. So feel free to drop questions in the chat. This is specifically for, this time is specifically for process and best practices when it comes to budgeting. We ask that if you have specific questions regarding your association, that you consult your manager directly. We do have additional resources too. There's Sarah Steele. I have her email address right here, to facilitate questions in regards to capital projects, as well as Lisa, the Director of Community Outreach, who oversees the CFMs or Community Financial Managers. All right, we already have a few questions. It's great. I love interaction. So how do you convince co-op members that monthly assessments must increase? Our building is 100 years old. We have so much deferred maintenance. We cannot do anything new or preventative, it seems, because we are spending all of our funds on urgent repairs. Wow. That's a tough one, but not an uncommon one, to an extent, because I've seen several situations where it's hard to do the increase. And I always encourage communities to do at least some sort of increase every year. Typically, you want to do a small one because otherwise you end up doing large ones. I have a community that I manage right now that didn't increase their fees for decades and ended up having to increase it by a real a very high amount. That was very hard for people to swallow. Whereas like if you steadily increase over the years, it's more tolerable and people are able to plan accordingly. But as far as convincing the co-op, I mean, using visualizations, having the a Q&A session for the cooperative, providing them with information, maybe breaking it down into simple little buckets and being like, look, this is the last 3 years. This is where we're at. This is how much money we've been spending on fixing the boiler. The boiler's past its life. Here's the reserve study if anybody wants to review it. And just being completely transparent about it. I mean, you can also look at, saving initiatives, which help, but increases are not something you can avoid.
Right.
All
Right.
right. You guys have anything to add before I move on to the next?
Yeah, and to
Yeah,
go ahead, Sarah.
No, I just think that this lends towards big strategic planning, right? If you have found yourself in a situation where you've been deferring the projects that have been laid out within the reserve study, you need to now have a kind of, whether it be an updated reserve study or a plan of attack, if you will, prioritizing which projects should be completed first because they have lined up, they've stacked, right? So looking at the urgency of the project and the return on investment is usually what goes into the strategic planning of determining which project to take. And then, the resources that we can help provide is lending real life numbers to each of those projects and the amount of time they typically take so that you can then plan for, if you've got a lot of deferred maintenance, it's not all going to get completed in a year. And so what does the financial implications look like over the next 5 years, maybe, for completing that work?
Right. And to hitch right on to what Sarah said, when you find yourself in that situation, we'll have to triage some of that. What's first, second, third, and fourth? And from a communication point of view, we need to lay it out to the community. We've been deferring this, and now it's gotten to a point where we cannot ignore it anymore, and be open and transparent and share the information and share the timelines and share the reserve study and the information. Again, information is power. Help people to understand, but it is, as Sarah Keller said, it's not really realistic to expect that fees should not increase at least a little bit every year, at least in keeping with CPI or some kind of inflation, something every year. Costs increase every year. We all know this. So too do our funding of the needs to keep our building running smooth.
All right. Next one, you mentioned that EJF has resources to help with strategic budgeting regarding the reserve study and how to prioritize and identify the projects. Who are the resources, Sarah Steele?
Well, so I lead a team of construction project managers who've been doing this for, embarrassingly to say, decades. Each of us have a breadth of experience working in multifamily housing and capital improvement projects. So we'll be able to kind of assess where you currently stand and then help guide what the process should be for your particular community to kind of get you to that point where you feel as though you've got a viable plan in place. If we don't have the answers, we know who to go and ask. So if you have a complex situation and we need to bring in a trade expert or an engineer to help supplement the information that we already have, then we'll know and recognize that and be able to recommend that to the association. So between our internal team and the external resources that we have available to us, that's your A team right there.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Next one, 2 questions for Q&A. When can I expect to get a copy of our draft budget from our manager? Your manager will produce your draft budget by October 1st. So between now and October 1st, you will get a budget. We've already had budgets go out. Managers are getting in there, getting all the scrubbing done and putting everything in the right places and getting ahead of it. If we have their second question is if we have questions about budget structure or categories requiring expertise above the manager's level, with whom can we speak? Well, I would say submit your questions to your manager. Don't cut their ability, because we do have lots of managers that are very financially savvy. However, if they're unable to answer those questions, then they would go to the CFM assigned, the community financial manager, and get them involved. All right. Does a reserve study cost additional fees?
Yes. From an actual reserve study standpoint, yes. To hire the professional team that does a reserve study does cost, and the fees will vary based off of the size of your building and how recently your last reserve study was done. And then there is a fee related to EJF implementing the research study or sourcing that for you.
All right. Our community's annual meetings on November 6th. What time do you need to start working on our budget and have it done? So we've already started working on the budget process, and your manager will have it October 1st. But I recommend, you can reach out to them if you need it by a certain date before, because you have like an internal board meeting that's pending in like mid-October, and half the board's going to be on vacation for second half of the year. Just ask. They're happy to prioritize and accommodate different timelines. All right. How does EJF management help inform a new board treasurer who has little experience with the role as a volunteer treasurer? Lisa, you want to take that?
Yes, can you roll up in the question so I can see the rest of it? As the Director of Community Outreach, it's my job to liaise with the boards. So a new treasurer, an existing treasurer, please reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through financials, through process, through the entire financial package, the portal, how to use it, when to use it, where to focus your attention. And I have a team of community financial managers who look at your financials monthly. So the net is, if you have questions, if you have issues, call me or email me.
So if it's your first time being a treasurer, you can also just be like, hey, community manager, can we go over this together? Manager's happy to set a long time too, to walk you through it and explain like why things are the way they are and help adjust. And we also have the CFM team.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, this presentation and recording is available to board members that are not participating. We're going to send out a special email. Normally, we include this in the footer of your weekly management reports, but we're going to send a special email. We're also going to include like a nice little recap of just key best practices. So thank you. And then how can we find out who our financial manager is? Well, you can ask your community manager, and they'll be happy to share that information and introduce you and them. All right. Not seeing much more in the chat at this current time, but we'll give it a few more moments in case people have additional questions pop up. Sarah and Lisa, you guys have anything else you want to share?
No, I mean,
I think that,
the budget process
go,
is
Lisa.
the budget process is difficult and can be intimidating, but don't let it intimidate you. Get into it. You know your building, you know what goes on there. Don't be intimidated, by the bright lights. And obviously the EJF team, your manager and my team of community financial managers, we're here to help you. But get in there and live it, right? It'll be better. And again, knowledge is power. Involve the community for what I believe for a smoother process.
Yeah. We have a few more questions pop in. I remember hearing that it's a good idea to open the budget meeting to all owners to observe. Is that something that is required or recommended? We have done that the past couple of years. So I always like to think about this as like a few different steps. So I like to meet with my board and have like a working session where we're just getting through it, and then we're having a formal session with the community where we're just presenting it. So this way, like the board and I are on the same page about like what we're trying to do, what we're recommending, etc. And it doesn't mean like when we have that Q&A session that whatever budget we're producing at that time is going to be the final budget. We might decide like, homeowners decided they didn't want that package delivery company anymore. Or what have you, and we decided to poll the owners to see whether or not it was worth paying this extra amount, what have you. Um, so, first one, meet with the manager, do a little huddle, get on the same page, and then have a unified front of like when you're nearly there and get their input and before you finalize and approve the budget. Okay. And I think that's it. Sarah, did you have anything you want to say in closing? No, we cut back to the questions.
Yeah, I think that just I think like Lisa mentioned, don't be intimidated, just dive in. And I would say that that's the same thing for construction. Folks hate construction. It's noisy, it's smelly, it's dirty, it's inconvenient. But it's necessary. And so it's rather than continuing to delay things or delay projects, I think it's best to kind of address them head on and have a plan so that you can have more control over the execution of the project. I think that's really key.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules.
Thank you.
I'm excited and extremely anxious at the same time. I get this way every year, and I know your managers are too, believe me, because I manage them. So have a good rest of your day. And yeah, I'll see you guys next month for another learning session.
So have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hi.